For many years, Pink Floyd was viewed as a shining example of musical brilliance and a force that revolutionized rock music. However, a storm was building beneath the mesmerizing songs and the surreal light displays. The mysterious man responsible for a large portion of Pink Floyd's success, Roger Waters, had long concealed the causes of the band's internal conflict. He now speaks out at the age of 80, exposing the emotional and unvarnished reality of Pink Floyd's tumultuous history. Imagine the intensity of a confrontation between equally gifted brains and a creative juggernaut such as Roger Waters. Imagine the demanding tours, the constant scrutiny from both fans and reviewers, and the constant pressure to surpass their most recent masterpiece. Few people saw the backstage conflicts that frequently descended into personal animosity, but the world saw the grandeur. According to Roger Waters, these confrontations are like a clash of titans, with each member's vision occasionally harmonizing wonderfully, but frequently crashing disastrously. The story of Roger Waters starts in the aftermath of World War II, which claimed his father, before he had a chance to get to know him well. Roger Waters was born in the little hamlet of Great Bookham, Surrey, on September 6, 1943. His early years were impacted by the death of his father, Eric Fletcher Waters, a teacher and a devoted Christian who perished in the fighting. This loss started to appear frequently in his songs, especially in The Wall and The Last Cut. Roger Waters met Nick Mason, Richard Wright, and Syd Barrett at the Regent Street Polytechnic in London by chance. The spark that would eventually grow into one of the most significant rock bands in history was lit by this fortuitous encounter. A major turning point was Syd Barrett's departure because of mental health concerns. When David Gilmour took over, the band's dynamic was irrevocably altered. Pink Floyd created iconic albums like Animals, Wish You Were Here, The Wall, and The Dark Side of the Moon under Waters' direction. However, there was a cost to the band's success. The foundational fissures of Pink Floyd had grown into chasms by the early 1980s. The band's fabric started to be torn apart by unresolved conflicts, artistic disagreements, power battles, and personal problems during the tense recording of the final cut, which was an expression of years of pent-up anger. Gilmour's and Waters' perspectives frequently diverged, resulting in acrimonious disputes and deep animosity. The record, which is usually regarded as Roger Waters' solo endeavor, with the band's name attached, was the result of Waters' intense political disenchantment and personal suffering. The band's togetherness during the recording sessions suffered greatly as a result of the album's unvarnished and emotional content. The air was poisonous. Wur's domineering personality and unrelenting quest for perfection clashed brutally with David Gilmour and Nick Mason's more relaxed outlooks. As a result of Waters' need for control, Richard Wright had already been kicked out of the band during the construction of The Wall. The band members could hardly stand to be in the same room anymore, due to the obvious stress and the decline in communication. There was little room for cooperation, because Waters' vision for the band had grown so solitary and devouring. It became more and more difficult for Gilmour and Mason to work in such terrible conditions, as they grew dissatisfied and disillusioned. A chilly professional detachment had largely replaced the companionship that had formerly fostered their creative synergy. Roger Waters decided to leave Pink Floyd in 1985 because he was certain that the band would not be able to function without him. Waters felt certain that Pink Floyd was essentially done, and continued his solo career with the assurance that he alone would be responsible for the legacy he helped create. But Mason and Gilmour had other plans. They made the decision to go on, determined to show that Pink Floyd could survive without Waters. The ruling paved the way for a contentious and drawn-out legal dispute regarding the band's name and content. Feeling deceived and undercut by his old comrades, Waters was furious. Since he felt the Pink Floyd name was inextricably linked to his identity and contributions, he filed a lawsuit to stop them from using it. There were many charges and rebuttals in the contentious litigation. It was a struggle for the band's identity and legacy as well as their name. Waters maintained that his artistic contributions were essential to Pink Floyd's existence. The court dispute lasted for years, causing deep rifts and enduring animosities, despite Gilmour and Mason's contention that the band was a group effort and they had every right to continue. The public observed this turbulent time with a mix of interest and sorrow. Pink Floyd's formerly cohesive front became a shattered and divisive spectacle, as the lawsuits news and the acrimonious exchanges between former friends and collaborators were widely publicized. Seeing their favorite musicians involved in such a public and ugly fight devastated fans. A resolution was eventually achieved. Waters kept the rights to The Wall and certain other projects, but Gilmour and Mason were permitted to continue using the Pink Floyd brand. But it would take years for the wounds from this struggle to heal. All parties involved were permanently impacted by the hatred and resentment, which had a lasting effect on their future careers. Waters carried on with his solo activities in the ensuing years, while Gilmour, Mason, and Richard Wright started new Pink Floyd ventures. The fact that Pink Floyd's legacy endured despite their divergent careers is evidence of their continuing influence on the music industry. Waters had a solo career after Pink Floyd, producing albums such as Amused and The Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking Radio Chaos, demonstrated his unwavering inventiveness and political activism, although not being as monetarily successful as his Pink Floyd days. Waters gained notoriety for his candid ideas on social and political matters, frequently expressing them through his music. However, Waters' personal life suffered as a result of these conflicts, and his unrelenting quest for artistic excellence. Following him, he had a reputation for being hard to deal with, troubled relationships with his children, and several divorced marriages. Waters acknowledged that his desire for perfection and control frequently caused him to become estranged from those closest to him. Waters has seen something of a rebirth in recent years. His 2017-2018 US Them Tour, which combined Pink Floyd classics with his solo material and featured breathtaking visual effects and scathing political satire, was a critical and financial triumph. Waters' fervor for activism never wavered as he spoke out against injustice, persecution, and war using his position. However, Waters' reconciliation with his old bandmates was possibly the most unexpected occurrence. Waters, Gilmour, Mason, and Wright got back together for a special performance at Live 8, a charity concert that raised money to combat world poverty, in 2005. There was a sense of closure and real emotion in the performance, which was electrifying. Waters characterized the encounter as restorative and a reminder of their shared accomplishments, in spite of their differences. Roger Waters took some time to consider his life, work, and Pink Floyd's legacy as he approached his 80th birthday. He was open about his regrets, his missteps, and the lessons he had learned in interviews. He was deeply appreciative of the music they made together and admitted his part in the band's disputes. In addition, Waters shared details of his private life, showing a more sensitive and reflective side that few had before noticed. Roger talked about his passion for music and his dedication to using it to effect change. Waters' most recent endeavors keep pushing the envelope in terms of both music and politics. Unafraid to voice his opinions and question the current quo, he continues to be a contentious figure. However, beyond the rebellious facade lies a sense of calm and acceptance, an understanding of the path he has taken, and the difference he has made. A new record and documentary that promises to go even further into Waters' personal and professional life have been his most recent projects. Even his most devoted admirers will be shocked and surprised by the revelations he alludes to. As usual, Waters is pushing the envelope, asking both himself and his audience to experience the world, think and feel in novel ways. Roger Waters and Pink Floyd's music endures as a timeless tribute to their remarkable brilliance and unwavering vision. Despite their highs and lows, we were just a bunch of guys trying to make sense of the world through our music. We always made an effort to be authentic, even if we weren't always successful. The narrative of Roger Waters is one of opposites. The genius and the imperfections, the victories and the tragedies, the genius and the struggles. He is 80 years old, and a living example of the human spirit's tenacity and the power of music. He has a long way to go. The world observes, listens, and speculates about what the next chapter will hold as he keeps creating, inspiring, and provocating. How do you think the creative forces behind Pink Floyd's hits wind up embroiled in acrimonious disputes and enduring animosities? Tell us in the space provided below.